Wes, I've got good news and bad news to start the show this week. Do you want the good or bad first?
Let's get the bad out of the way.
Get the bad out of the way, rip the plaster off. So, many people will be aware who listen that I used to be big into Football Index. I pulled that podcast just over a week ago, and thank God I pulled a lot of my money out of it over the past few months. So I got away pretty much scot-free. But a lot of people will have heard that a lot of people didn't get away like that. A lot of people got really badly burnt. And a lot of those people listened to us because they followed me over for my Football Index content. So just a wee shout out to let them know we're thinking of them. In my opinion, you've been absolutely royally shafted. And hopefully the company themselves are brought to justice, because there's definitely something fishy going on. But it's a mad world, Wes.
Yeah,
it is a mad world.
It's a tough one. I feel sorry for anyone. It's not something that I've ever been involved in myself, but yeah, I feel sorry for anyone who has been essentially duped by it, because the people who run the company, from what I can gather, have done a really bad job, and yeah, it's been pretty atrocious, really. So yeah, thoughts go out to anyone who's been affected by that. And hopefully, the losses aren't too bad and you can recover and move on.
Absolutely. And, put your pride aside, put your ego aside. We all felt very attached to that platform and told everyone about how amazing it was, and it was going to change gambling forever. But look, put the pride aside, talk to someone and look after your mental health. Don't try and be the big man. Talk to someone, get it off your chest. And if that needs to be me, give me a wee message on Twitter and we can have a call. Right, on to a lighter note, Ways. Apparently, there are some boys out in Lebanon who listen to us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They go out running around the dunes. I don't actually know what the terrain in Lebanon is like, but they go out for runs and listen to us. And so shout out to the 117th Battalion over in Lebanon. And I've heard stuff about this guy over there. I don't know. His name's Rory Timoney. I think it's Sergeant Rory Timoney. Wes, have you heard anything about this guy?
All I know about him is he's a Derry Spice Boy, if ever I've seen one.
I heard that too. I heard he's a bit of a Spice Boy from Derry. Not quite as rugged as those Donegal lads. But yeah, all jokes aside, this is a nice little story, Wes. So basically, my cousin's out there with the 117th Battalion.
Yeah.
And he didn't plug or tell anyone about my fantasy content, but a few guys apparently came to him and said, "Do you have a brother who does a fantasy football podcast?" And yeah, they put two and two together with the accents, with the surnames, and yeah, they listened to our podcast completely organically. So that's where our Lebanon listeners are coming from, I think.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So yeah, it's the fact that he's seen your surname and just asked a question because of the accent and all that, and it wasn't actually a recommendation. And I think you told me off air that they think it's one of the best pods around. So yeah, cheers boys for listening.
He might just be saying that to soothe my ego, by the way. Yeah. He might just be saying, they said you're one of the best. Maybe they said, it's a kind of substandard, mediocre FPL content, but it's all,
Well, we'll take it. we'll take it all day long. But cheers for listening. Cheers for doing a great job out there in Lebanon.
Absolutely. And if any of you want to shout out, let us know where you're at. If you're in weird circumstances. Now, don't tell me if you're working in Super Value in Kent. I don't even know if that's a thing. But if you're doing something a bit weird, or you're in a strange place or a strange job, I'd be very interested to know.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And it's also nice to know how people found the podcast. And it's also nice when people tell friends about the podcast. But anyway, that's enough plugging for this week, I think, Wes. People should just make sure they subscribe and leave us a review. And will we get into the podcast? Am I missing anything?
No, I think that's all good. And yeah, that was good. And I echo that. I definitely want to hear from people all around the world and how they found out about us and if they enjoy listening and all that stuff. So yeah, that's going to be fun to find out. And just before we get started, get into the meat of the pod, just a little disclaimer out there. I have got a really bad cough at the minute, so if you hear that a little bit, just suck it up.
Suck it up, you fucks. It's not the Rona. No one has to worry.
No.
It's been confirmed as not non-Rona.
Yeah.
But look, that's I suppose cousins of mine are becoming a theme of this podcast. First with the guy who knew my cousin Brendy in Belfast, and now we've got someone knowing my cousin out in Lebanon. Yeah. I have a lot of cousins, Wes. Let's hope it can keep going.
Yeah, John's cousins. So yeah, let's keep it going.
Yeah, let us know if you know a Nellis. That would be interesting. Send us all your Nellises. # I know a Nellis. Anyway, I'm dwelling here. Into the podcast. Alright, Wes. Straight up no kissing. Bale and Son. It's the big topic of this week anyway, according to our questions. We're not going to dwell on it too long, so if anyone doesn't have either or care for them, just listen, it's interesting. So Kiwi Nick FPL and Stephen Curtis both asking questions around the kind of general sentiment of Bale or Son if you can only pick one, is kind of the sentiment of the question. There's a few other people referencing Spurs players. Rich FPL's mentioned them. There's a few others around there. I think even FPL 350's talking about an example of Bale, Son and Kane. There's Son, Kane mentioned, and is this the real life's question? Basically, everyone's bloody mentioning them.
Yeah.
It feels like we're back to 6-8 weeks ago, start of the season. We were talking about them every week. They went quiet for a while, and they're back with a Bale.
Yeah, so with these three, I don't know if I mentioned it on last week's pod or maybe when we were streaming for Fantasy Football Hub, John, but I was in the dilemma of having Kane, and I had the kind of Salah and Harvey Barnes issue, and I didn't know whether to take a -4 or maybe get both of them. Obviously, it's easy to say that now after Bale's obviously just gone and smashed it, so I was never that close to getting Bale, to be honest. But, Bale's just obviously... he's cemented it for more people now. He got a huge score a few games ago, didn't he? A 19-pointer in the first of the double game week a couple of games ago when no one really had him. That put him on the radar, obviously. A couple of good European performances as well. And then now we're in the sort of territory of he's now kind of back. His minutes are still being managed, so he is going to... I think Mourinho's been quoted to say that anytime he feels slightly fatigued, most players would kind of just carry on to the end of the match, but with him, they're just going to take him off. So he is going to keep maybe getting 65, 70 minutes. But
well, you can see there that he's had 69 minutes twice, and he goes in hard on the 69. Yeah. And you dirty bastards out there may just clean your minds out. But yeah, he does. Whenever he's playing 69 minutes, he goes in hard. So
yeah, that's the
magic number for Bale. Yeah.
And in terms of how early on in the season, Son was getting a lot of shots away. But now there's some stats that I've stolen from a tweet from @BigManBakar, so I'll give him a shout out as I'm using his content on the pod. But yeah, basically it kind of shows in the last 3 matches that they've started together, Son, Bale and Kane, in terms of minutes per chance created. I'll say it more simply than this. I'll say it who's the best for this metric. So who's creating the most chances? It's Son, and then Bale and Kane are very similar. Who's creating the most big chances? Again, it's Son. He's creating one every 45 minutes. So in each half of a football game, he's creating a big chance. So he's likely to get assists. And then Bale and Kane are quite a way off that, but Kane is slightly better. But here, when it comes to shots inside the box and big chances and stuff like that, so the sort of the metrics that you'd use to measure how likely a player is to actually score a goal, it's flipped on its head. So Son's actually the worst performer in those metrics, with Kane being the best and Bale not too far behind Kane actually. So Son's kind of shifted from maybe more of a creator, to more of a creator. Bale and Kane kind of maybe more central, getting those tap-ins. If you think about Bale's goals, they were probably both in the 6-yard box in the last game. His header from and his sort of tap-in that Kane put across the goal, where Son's maybe going a bit more wide. So they're all good assets because obviously assists will get you points. But yeah, it's just an interesting one to note because I think the sort of first half of the season we was all associating Son with goals. Kane was laying them on the plate and Son was finishing them, wasn't he? So it's an interesting dynamic when they all play together. And which one do I prefer? My opinion on who I prefer out them doesn't really matter. They're all great options. So I think going into week 29, you want at least 2 of those guys. So Kane's the standout for me. Best sort of captaincy option, plays every game on penalties and just in really good form, both creatively and goal scoring. So Kane's a kind of captaincy option for game week 29 when not many teams play. And then if you had to pick one out of the other 2, I'd still kind of be tempted to go Son, just those extra minutes on the pitch. We know he can score goals as well, so if he does start upping his chances, then he will get more goals. And Bale, I just feel Bale could be an injury away from or getting rested in a random game. So I do still prefer Son, but I don't actually mind the triple up actually on that one, John.
Someone said triple up. If I had like an air horn, it would be a good time for that. Doesn't happen too many times in a season. City's really been the only obvious one this season so far. Maybe there's been a couple of others, but
and also not with and that would be including no defenders, wouldn't it? So most of our City triple up so far have been like a midfielder and a couple of defenders.
Or even like Villa would have been the keeper, defender, Grealish or something.
Yeah, exactly. But this would be 3 attackers, and I know. Yeah, I'm trying to think back to how seriously I did consider this, but yeah, I did consider a -4 of Barnes and Salah to Son and Bale. I ended up going just the single transfer for Lingard in the end. But yeah, and the only reason I mentioned that I considered it is because I did think it was a decent option then, and it's definitely a valid option now. So yeah, you'd be tripling up on Spurs. Do keep an eye out on game week 33. I think we mentioned it last week. There will be another blank game week for only 4 teams in that one. So it's Man City, Spurs, Southampton and Fulham. So yeah, just make sure you don't fill up your cheap slots with sort of Southampton, Fulham players, and have a kind of an exit plan for maybe one of your Spurs guys and one of your City guys, that sort of thing.
This is one of those ways where we, on the stream, I think, was where we did it first, where we were first really started discussing Bale. We've also talked about it on the podcast, obviously, but this week, for anyone listening, we are streaming on Friday night on the Fantasy Football Hub channel. Mm-hmm. Come over, watch us live. If you're busy on a Friday night, you can watch it after the fact, but do pop in and say hello anyway. Throw some abuse at us, throw us a like, something like that. But yeah, we were very risk adverse when it came to onboarding Bale. He had the big score. He was sniffing around the team, getting some minutes. He looked good. I think it was the second half in the West Ham game. He looked electric. He got the assist. Everyone was talking about him. And I stand by the fact that at that stage, he'd only really played next to fuck all minutes. Yeah. He had an 18-minute appearance. He had a 45-minute appearance. He looked really good, and we all knew he looked really good. But for me and my risk appetite, it was too much. He went and banged a brace in against Burnley, and he was on the radar. And then he's done the same against Crystal Palace. So fair play to those who got on early. We keep saying this, but it's just to kind of reiterate to the listener, because people do play differently. We're very similarly aligned in how risk adverse we are in terms of FPL, but fair play to those that went in hard on Bale.
And actually, John, just to jump in there, actually, it's interesting because we are risk averse, and we're kind of saying with all our advice, like we kind of trying to advise people, how we'd play, because that's the most authentic way of giving advice. But equally, there are multiple ways of playing FPL. You get those managers who are super aggressive, who take a -4 every week, who go for these risky picks, and it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. And maybe some seasons they'll have really big good seasons, and other seasons they'll have really bad seasons. But yeah, there are multiple ways of playing, and those who jumped on early, like full kudos to them. And maybe a weakness in our games, John, where we maybe have to tweak our game, maybe, or consider it a bit more, but it's hard to say that because, certain players are going to score points, and, players in our team could have got them, etc. So we can't be too critical on ourselves, but it's always good to be open to new ideas.
Yeah, 100%. Why was I bringing that up? I think I felt like I was so blessed. I got Vardy and Barnes in on the wild card a few weeks ago for the big 26 for my double. And obviously Vardy and Barnes did well. Kane and Son blanked, and I felt like I was a god. Or I don't know if they blanked, but they definitely didn't do great. It was that West Ham game, I think. So I said, look, I'll stick with Vardy for a few games, when really if I'd have just pivoted, I was so close to the Spurs lads. I chose Leicester over them, felt like a hero for a week when Barnes got his 13-pointer, but it was all downhill after that.
It's hard with hindsight, and it's also, in terms of Barnes, he got injured, didn't he, straight after his really big score, so Barnes could have continued to do well, so we've kind of been, not robbed because injuries happen, but yeah, it's you can't call the Barnes one a mistake. Vardy over Kane, again, in hindsight, maybe a mistake, but again, with Vardy's fixtures and how lethal Vardy can be at certain times, then it could have definitely worked out. So, yeah, don't beat yourself up about that one.
So look, the in terms of Spurs, I'll talk about them maybe when we get to our kind of teams and transfer section at the end, because I'll definitely be getting at least one of them in. So the next question was, this was highlighted to you by a listener of the show, Scott Sanders. Shout out to Scott Sanders. He sent you through some stats that Duncan Alexander had posted on Twitter. And Alistair Mead reminded us of this in the question. So the stats go like this: Premier League goals per game by month this season. So in September there were 3.68 goals per game. In October there were 2.85. November 2.5. 2.53, 2.4, 2.52, and then March so far, albeit less data, that's probably a few days old, 1 week or 2 game weeks of the season are only in March so far, 1.58. And what's been discussed here is fatigue. Now, if you look at that, as I'll say, 3.68 to start the season, 1.58 now, and in and around 2.5 in the middle there. Less goals is a question on people's lips. As Alistair says to us, is now the time to go 4 to 5 at the back and 1 up top. Forwards don't seem to be scoring high lately, other than Harry Kane, one could argue. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, and watching football over the last few weeks or so, maybe even in late Feb as well, I can't really remember, but I do feel like I've watched a lot of boring games or a lot of low scoring games. And why that is, could be fatigue, could be numerous things, couldn't it? But for whatever reason, it does seem like goals have dried up, at least partially. In terms of switching formation, yeah, I think I'm always kind of flex when someone comes to me with a question about what formation what they should play. I'm always fairly flexible with my answer, and I don't think there should ever really be a definitive answer. Obviously, it changes, and if Bamford, Watkins, and Harry Kane will literally score in every game, and they're all pushing for 30 plus goals this season, just hypothetically, then yeah, obviously 3 up front is the way to go. However, at the minute, yeah, in terms of the strikers on offer to us, the more expensive ones like Vardy and Werner aren't really doing it. DCL had a good stage in the season earlier on, but again, not really doing it. Kane's obviously almost a must-have. And then the cheaper strikers like Watkins and Bamford haven't been as good in the last couple of weeks as they have been. So yeah, you could switch it up. I think it's just dangerous. I do like to keep a structure of favouring having more attacking players on the pitch, and again, rightly or wrongly, other people might play differently and do better than me in the overall ranks. But yeah, I do often favour just keeping those attackers in those positions, because when the goals start to flow again, your team's set up for that. It's just how I play. But yeah, equally, you could easily go for a few defenders. For the blank week, I'm likely to play a 4-3-3, I think. But yeah, we'll get onto our teams a little bit later. So yeah, I'm not sitting on the fence, but I would say it depends, and there's no right or wrong answer. You can go for it if you want to, and you could make gains by doing so. But it's just not a way that I play, and I don't think I'm going to change just for a few weeks of data. Yeah,
I think whenever you look at them, obviously, if you look, it's pretty damning, I suppose, if you look at them in a certain way. So if you look at the first month of the season, September, 3.68, but that was crazy. That was exceptional. That wasn't the rule, that was the exception.
Yeah.
October, November, December, January and February, we're talking about a spread here from 2.4 to 2.85 goals per game. That's pretty they're not that far out. You're talking in and around 2.5 goals a game, right? And then this March could be quite misleading, because it's probably 1 game week, 2 game weeks at most, and it might just be a couple of bad game weeks. So to say that 1.58 is purely down to fatigue, I just think it's a bit misleading. I think we'd need to wait for all of March's data, and then that average might be pulled up towards the 2.5. So while, Duncan Alexander, fair play to him, he sticks out some freaky stats, while he sticks it out there, and obviously it gets a bit of traction, then that mightn't have been where it came from. Maybe it was a common discussion and he just made stats on it based on that. But basically, I seen that, and now I'm seeing questions about it. The way I look at this is, if that's what it's based off, I'd like a bit more,
I think
to really make me pivot my whole...
Sorry, I was just going to say that, like you alluded to, it's just not enough data yet, because, like you said, March is only just begun, really. So yeah, maybe if this trend continues right the way throughout March, then sort of start of April time, we can maybe start thinking about it. Or in a few game weeks time, if we keep seeing a lot of clean sheets and less goals, then yeah, we can definitely look to pivot one of our attacking 8 players and getting just 1 extra defender. So it wouldn't be that big of a change. Because if you think about it, with things like formation, if I start playing a 4-4-2 now, essentially, John, and let's just say you're playing a 3-4-3, we could have literally an identical team and an identical captain every week, whereas I just have 1 extra defender in, let's say Cresswell, and then you'd have maybe Watkins at front. So formation, we can get bogged down in it, and it can, a 4-4-2 is just 1 less attacker and 1 extra defender. It's not a huge difference, if that makes sense.
No, I hear you. Look, we'll see how that goes. It's an interesting observation. Maybe we'll see some teams going a bit more defence heavy. For me, I'm kind of happy with the defence. 2 City guys, we've got Dallas there, who's completely out of position, and then rotating in either Target or Loudness, who I have there. I'm kind of happy with where it's at. I'm not going to change it. I also think it's a different way of watching football. If we're talking about an entertainment perspective,
yeah, that's a good point.
There's a big difference watching games with a squeaky bum shitting yourself every time the other opposing team gets in the final third. There's a big difference there, or having that extra attacking player who's on set pieces, or who's a creator, or who is known for their goal threat. It changes maybe how you watch FPL. Maybe that's a bit too deep for the question at hand, but
no, it's actually a very good point, and it depends if you want to play FPL like sort of more robotic and you just care about overall rank and nothing else, then yeah. But I think essentially 99% of people, including ourselves, we want to watch FPL. We watch Premier League games and we want to watch our strikers and our midfielders score goals, and even our defenders. Like, when I'm watching them, I'm hoping they pop up and score from a corner or get an assist from open play or something like that. So yeah, I do get what you're saying. I think it's a really valid point, actually.
Next question is from Elgato99. Bringing in 2 defenders who play in 29, who ideally I keep until the end of the season. Leaning towards Tierney and Cresswell. Anyone else stand out? So if you're looking at two defenders to bring in now until the end of the season, who play in 29, who are you looking at?
Yeah, so for me, I have the same dilemma, actually. I'm looking at, without any transfers, I've got 7 players who play in the blank. And I will have 2 free transfers, one this week and one next week, to get up to 9 players without any hits. But I am looking at actually taking a -8 to get 4 players in. And 2 of those will be defenders. And the 2 I'm looking at right now, and it isn't just because of the performance a couple of days ago, but 2 West Ham guys, Cresswell and Dawson. Dawson's cheap, he's only 4.5. He's one of the best at attacking the ball from a corner currently in the league. Maybe the stats that disprove that, but for me, he's one of the best. And Cresswell's got one of the best deliveries. So for me, I'm looking at both those West Ham guys. West Ham have been solid this year, so in terms of they're knocking on the door of Champions League spots, but they've still got a defender who's only 4.5 million. So yeah, Dawson goal threat, Cresswell assist threat. West Ham overall fairly solid for clean sheets, kept winning against Leeds. Not many teams can say that this year. So yeah, I'm actually looking at that sort of double up there. The West Ham guys, week on week. So yeah, in week 29, I'll actually play forward at the back with both of them. And then, when West Ham do have a tougher fixture, we'll probably just play one of them, or maybe even, or maybe none of them. If you know what I mean, I can use my bench. I'll have 5 solid defenders to choose from.
Surprise package of the season. Do you reckon West Ham are them?
Yes, got to be, hasn't it? Where are they in the league at the minute?
5th.
5th, yeah.
With a game in hand over Chelsea. If they win that game, they're in 4th.
Yeah, playing really well.
2 points behind Leicester, they'd be 3 points behind Man United. Obscene. And
the good thing about West Ham assets is David Moyes plays the same team pretty much week on, week out. So, at the minute, we know what defenders are going to play. Cresswell and Dawson, we know they're going to play. Unless, if one goes massively out of form. Well, Cresswell's not missing out. But my point being is that you can kind of hang your hat on them playing. Whereas with the likes of other teams, you're always a bit unsure. So say someone like Reguilon, again, sorry for the pronunciation, it's the Spurs left back. I'd really like him, but I just know Jose's going to rotate that position a little bit, so I'm probably going to steer clear.
It's actually, if you look at the table, it's like a FIFA table. It's like you've been playing FIFA for 3 weeks and you look at the wee table on it, and it's always a wee bit off, but it's kind of right. Like, whenever you look at it, Liverpool in 8th, Arsenal in 10th, Spurs in 7th, even like Southampton in 14th. It doesn't, well, maybe Southampton have been pretty shit. Leeds in 11th. I don't know. It's just a bit all over the place. City, United at the top, yeah. Then you have like Leicester, Chelsea, West Ham. Everton in 6th surprises me. I don't feel like, if you ask me where Everton in the table, I'd have pinned them mid-table. I wouldn't have put them at 6th, to be quite honest with you. I didn't think they'd done that well.
Yeah, they had a strong start, didn't they, Everton, and then kind of a big sort of bleak middle patch, and now started picking up results again. I know what you mean, it's tough. Like, you kind of think of teams. I thought Leeds would be higher because of the praise that we give them on this pod and pundits everywhere. And then you actually look at the table, there's a load of teams ahead of them. So, and Crystal Palace seem to be having a terrible season, in my opinion. But I saw a stat the other day that it's their the best ever points total in the Premier League season at this stage of the season or something, which really surprised me.
Hardly. They're 13th, like, Jesus.
I know,
that's mad. They're still not safe for relegation. They are, but they aren't.
Yeah.
That would be obviously a really strange turn of events. But mathematically it's there. So the table looks very interesting this season. I don't know why I brought that up, but it definitely sort of surprised me, a couple of the teams and positions, because it's one of those things I never really look at. Some people maybe live for the table, and particularly if you really follow a team, but like, I just follow points and form of players within FPL. I don't really look at the table too much. Yeah, you have an idea who's where, and you know who the top 2 or 3 are, but like, anyway, there we are. I wonder if anyone else is like me, completely detached from football in the Premier League because they're completely just flawed by FPL. Imran Fariz, a solid asker of questions, one might add. So fair play to you, Imran. Any Chelsea assets to consider ahead of the Leeds tie? Alonso, Mount, Azpilicueta, or even Werner worth it for a 1 week punt ahead of Chelsea's blank game week?
So yeah, I guess it depends. If you've got a free hit chip, then you can be definitely looking at Chelsea assets. I definitely would be if I had my free hit chip. I've got Rudiger at the minute, which will either have to be transferred out before that game week or maybe benched. But yeah, I like a lot of the Chelsea assets, but there's just a lot of rotation there. So, excuse me.
He's dying of the cough.
Dying. There's in terms of if you want nailed on assets, it's tough. Azpilicueta, Mendy in goal is kind of your safest routes. Rudiger, I still feel fairly nailed. I know he missed out the last game. Excuse me. But yeah, there's not many nailed on assets there. So, and also both Mount and Rudiger both missed the last game, but I do feel like those guys play sort of, I don't know, 6 out of 7, rather than someone like, I don't know, Pulisic or Hudson-Odoi might play 1 and 2, something like that. So I think
not even Havertz is back in the mix. Havertz is in there scoring a goal, and I just think it's horrible because if you look at that midfield, there's so many good FPL options on other seasons, but this season, just the way it is, this transition period, finding out who they are, so much depth, so much quality, but they're just not gelling. They're all mixing, they're all coming in, they're all going there. It's just a horrible, horrible midfield, while it's such a beautiful midfield at the same time, from an FPL perspective. Do you know, if you look at that, if you put like any of these, you would imagine, maybe not now after the season they've had, but any of these you would have down to start in West Ham in a top 4 team or whatever, or a top 5 team. Like, we've got Pulisic, Ziyech, Kovacic, Hudson-Odoi, Kante, Havertz, Jorginho, and Mason Mount. Like, that's obscene.
So many options as well, yeah. Which is a nightmare for FPL. You'd rather them have a much smaller squad or a few injuries or something, so you could kind of hang your hat on someone. But yeah, I think they're getting a lot of clean sheets, aren't they? So I think defence is probably your best place to go. And then I've got someone like Rudiger. I'll take the odd benching if it is 1 in sort of 7. Any more regularly than that, I'll look to ship him out.
Absolutely. So we'll move on to our next question, I think. Unless you have anything more to say on Chelsea. Move on to Rich FPL asked, is it time to ditch Salah? Now, this is a big one as well. If it is Bale a viable replacement if you already have Son and Kane? And there is, I don't know, did we mention we did mention the triple up.
We did, yeah.
Well, maybe just cover that briefly again.
Just to,
viable?
Viable. I'd be happy with the triple up, and it's something I considered myself. So yes, in terms of pivoting from Salah to Bale, if you already have Son and Kane, is absolutely fine in my opinion. And in terms of getting rid of Salah, I wish I was braver to do it last week, but I just kind of went down the route of playing it safe and not taking the -4 yet, waiting to see more information, blah blah blah, and regret it. So Salah out. Salah hasn't got that fear factor. Liverpool are playing really poor. He's very expensive, and he's maybe lacking in some confidence. It's not to say he can't score some goals, but the thing with Salah is if he gets 1 goal, he very rarely gets bonus. Whereas with someone like Bruno, he'll get bonus for just scoring 1 goal. So there's a lot working against Salah at the minute, and no game in week 29 either. So yeah, pivoting to those other guys is a good shout at the minute. Yeah,
I think I'll be getting rid of Salah this week. A couple of times this season it's happened to me where I used to be much more risky, and this season there's been a couple of occasions where I've been slow to pull the trigger, and I kind of, not that I kick myself for it, but it's almost like this sort of sheep mentality, herd mentality, following people that I see, and it's worked out for me so far, you could say. You know, I had a pretty high rank 2 weeks ago, but a couple of things that stick out to me was Timo Werner earlier in the season. I was too stubborn with him. Mohamed Salah, I wanted to get rid of a few weeks ago. And then I was kind of, I was thinking like Liverpool are in shit form and da-da-da. But then whenever you actually looked back, he had like 15, 2, 7, 7. It was like, oh. And they've Everton, Sheffield, Chelsea and Fulham coming up. And I wanted rid of him when I was going to bring in Son. And I just didn't do it because I sort of thought, Salah, everyone's keeping Salah. It makes sense, he's an elite scorer and blah, blah, blah. I wish I just fucking pulled the trigger now, you know that?
Yeah, it's hard. And I think it's a good point that you bring that up, actually. Like, I've touched upon it as well, how I sort of regret not doing the double move this week. But the thing with FPL is you can have regret, like everyone will have regrets, and you'll have a lot of them over the course of the season about what you could or couldn't have done. But it's your brain automatically forgets all the good moves you've done, and the fact that, John, you're having your best ever season now, ranked up in probably still in the top 20k even after a tough week so far. So my point there is, don't worry about the sort of regrets or what I should have done this, should have done that, because we're on this FPL podcast, most people listening will take FPL fairly seriously and consider various different routes. So for example, this week I considered saving my transfer, I considered just doing Lingard in, I considered Lingard and Son, and I considered Son and Bale. So with all those considerations in there, at the end of the week, once those players that I haven't brought in, they're allowed to score points, and I can't kind of claim ownership over, I should have done that because, I could have done it and it could have backfired. So I'm kind of rambling a bit, but I kind of want to try and get across that everyone will have these regrets and you've got to kind of move past that. I haven't really worded it very well, but it is what it is.
No, I hear you completely. Look, we make decisions and we live by them. Sometimes you'll opt against it and it'll work, and sometimes you'll go for it and I say this every week. Bad bets win, good bets lose. That's the crux of the matter, As long as your decision making sound, you can sleep at night. It's like poker, You play. It's not like poker, but here we go. With a John analogy.
Here we go.
You play a game of poker, and like I play poker every Friday night with the lads now for lockdown, and I've played a lot of poker in my time. I understand the game of poker. I've been to live tournaments and X and Y and Z. Few of these guys, sound lads, but a lot of them haven't played a lot of poker. They've played a lot through lockdown. They're all getting way better. They understand the game really well. But like they put you out. Like you have aces. Say I have aces and I go all in pre-flop and I get called by king, queen, or a pair of queens.
Yeah.
And they hit a set in the flop and I get put out. Genuinely, I don't even care. It doesn't upset me. I don't get annoyed anymore about like. It's one of those things where you used to kind of go, for fuck's sake. And maybe if there's a lot of money on the line in a big tournament, you kind of go, fuck's sake. What I mean? Like soccer, fucking pair of queens catches it and puts me out with my aces. But the way I look at that and the way I look at everything now, there's just no point. You made a good bet. You had aces. You had to get them in. There's no getting away. That's the hand you were dealt, and you played it exactly as it should have been played. The dream scenario is both of you been all in when you have aces. So there's no point in being annoyed at yourself. And it goes back to decision making. If I had 7-9 of hearts and called someone going all in and they turn over aces, you're going, why the fuck did I call? And that's the whole thing. It's like with FPL, if you look back and it's like, why the fuck did I make that transfer? Why didn't I make that transfer? That's stupid. That was stupid play. That was stupid. Then you can be annoyed at yourself. Yeah. So just keep making sound decisions, and before you pull the trigger each week, think it through and think, is this what I want to do? And if the answer is yes, the rest is history. You can't change it. You've made the right decision.
Yeah. And
who cares?
Another good point you touched upon is there will be most of the if you're playing sensibly and you're playing well, most of the time it will be a good decision, but just maybe not the right outcome. But there will be occasions where you have transferred in a howler, you've made a mistake, and it's actually how you then react to that. It's like, okay, I've made a mistake. That was actually a bad decision, and it's about how you then respond to that. You don't make you don't chase. So use a gambling analogy again, you don't sort of chase lost money by making more bad decisions. You try and make a better decisions in the future to rectify that. So yeah, there's sort of both things you can learn from that.
Absolutely. Wes, something to touch on quickly before we get into our teams and transfers and captaincy for next week. Chip strategy in the next couple of weeks. We've been banging on about it for a long time, but neither of us have a free hit, and it's probably something we haven't covered much because of that. If you maybe give a couple of scenarios based on if you have a free hit and a wild card, if you only have a free hit, or if you only have a wild card, how would you be playing the next couple of weeks? If we can try and do that in a couple of minutes, just for people sitting in different situations, maybe. Yeah,
good point. So if I had the opportunity to play my free hit in week 29, I'd do so, unless I was already, some people have already got maybe 9 players already, and therefore you don't need to use it. So it's very hard. But yeah, if if I had a free hit, week 29 is a good choice to use it, or week 33, and therefore you can afford to hold triple City, triple Spurs, and maybe a cheap Fulham asset, and really attack that sort of blank in 33. Wildcard wise, I think that's more straightforward. If you've still got it, you probably want to be using it maybe week 30 straight after week 29, or week 31 there's a bit of a fixture swing. So a lot of the players who are kind of template at the minute will kind of be maybe flipped on its head from 31 onwards. So yeah, that's how I play it. But another sort of, there's a misconception going around that, you know, our teams are going to be full of dross. You know, if we target this week 29 blank, where, you know, a lot of the other teams don't play, then our teams will be full of dross. But the draft I've done for my team for that game week, I'm actually happy with all 15 of those players beyond that game week. So yeah, I think that kind of answers your question about what I do. Is there any more you want me to elaborate on there?
No, I think it's all good. Just wanted to cover it off quickly before we get into our teams.
And one thing I will add on to that is, if I had I do still have my triple captainship left, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be one, mini double game weeks, and one will include Spurs. And obviously Spurs have good captainable assets like Son, Kane or Bale. So yeah, I'll save my triple captain for a Spurs double game week and probably stick it on Harry Kane.
Very good. Well, Wes, we'll go on to our teams quickly. Maybe 5 or 10 minutes on this and wrap it up. So we'll not bore the tits off them. Basically, I've had a howler of a couple of weeks because I didn't have Spurs guys at all. Just 0 Spurs cover. I've had back-to-back weeks of really shit scores. Like, we're talking in a bench boost double game week 75, which was bad compared to like everyone else, and then 34 points so far this game week. We are recording, we didn't mention that, did we? Before the Man City extra and Southampton game. So we've still got Man City, Southampton to come. I've got Cancelo, Stones and Gundogan captain. Will they all play? Who knows? So looking like a bad week. I've went from a peak of about 5k down to 23k. So maybe I'll claw some back with Triple City and a captain, but I don't know. I'm not holding out too much hope. How are you looking, Wes?
Yeah, with mine, it's been a bit better than yours, but not brilliant. I got 98 that week, where you said about the bench boost, and I played bench boost as well. 98 -4 that week, so 94 net, which again it was good enough for a small green arrow. And normally I'm not greedy in that sort of regard, but when you have optimised with a wild card the week before, and you've then bench boosted, and you get outscored by people who haven't done those things, then it is frustrating. And week 27, I'm on 53 at the minute with Triple City left. So 54. Rudiger didn't play, which was annoying. Clean sheet there. And
Shaw on the bench.
Shaw was 14 points last on my bench, but again, a bit like your poker analogy earlier,
you're never playing him against City.
Yeah, exactly. It really didn't bother me at all. Third on my bench, City away. City had won 21 in a row. Blah blah blah. So you're thinking no clean sheet. You're thinking an attacking returns low as well. So yeah, I had better options that week and happy with that choice. And it's just a bit of unfortunate luck that he did get that. It does show that Shaw is, and I witnessed that in the games leading up to that, he is getting good attacking positions, so it's good for the future as well. So when I play Shaw, no reason why he can't get another attacking return. And where are we for looking forward to the future? That sort of week 29 shot. I've got a screenshot somewhere. I'll try and find it. Actually, I don't need to, but basically, I was trying to touch on earlier this sort of misconception that there'll be dross in the team if you kind of load up for week 29. I really don't see it like that, because in week 29 you have Spurs players, and will I be unhappy to have Kane, Son, and let's just say Bale, or another Spurs asset a bit more longer term? No, not at all. Leeds guys, will I be unhappy to have Rafinha in my team until the end of the season? Absolutely not. Obviously, things can change, form, etc. But players like Rafinha and Dallas, I'd happy back them right the way to the end of the season. I'm looking to get a Brighton defender in, potentially, maybe Dunk. And like I said, my double West Ham plan of Cresswell and Dawson is an option as well. And again, Dawson's 4.5, who can sit on my bench for many game weeks to the end of the season. I'm pretty sure Cresswell's the top point scoring defender in the whole league, so that's not dross there. And the Villa guys, Martinez is a keeper that I'm going to probably want to the end of the season. Concert is a decent cheap option who can sit on my bench most weeks, or maybe play in some easier weeks. And Watkins is a bit meh at the minute, but yeah, I'll possibly use some transfers. We are still going to have free transfers after this game week to take out the odd player who isn't performing. I've got Calvert-Lewin and Watkins who I'm not thrilled with. So, week 30 onwards I can, or maybe earlier for Calvert-Lewin, can just use the odd free transfer to take some of those guys out. So yeah, it's not doom and gloom after week 29 for us, John.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. I think something... Oh, God, I've had a brain fart. What was I going to say?
Don't edit this out.
I'm not even editing this out. There was something I was going to say. Oh,
that's it,
man. Anyway.
If it comes to you, we can bring it back up.
Yeah, oh God, it was interesting as well, Wes, I promise you. But something just to notice is that there's only, I think, 13 points difference between me and you overall, and 13k. I'm 23 and you're at 36 or something.
Yeah.
Maybe I got your rank just slightly off, but like the forfeit at the end of the season is tighter than it has been in a long time. Yeah,
I've caught you up a little bit, which is nice. But yeah, I'm hoping we can, ideally, better side. I'm hoping we both do well. And I guess if we're going to have a little analysis of our whole season so far, John, what week are we in? Week 27. So yeah. Week 27's almost done. Like you said, it's just the City game, and we're both sitting. Like you said, around 35k. You're around. Did you say 23k?
Yep.
If someone had said at the start of the season, okay, by the end of week 27 you are going to be top 35k, and you have 11 game weeks to push on, or however many it is, I'd have probably taken that at this stage of the season. So, you're probably feeling a little bit negative because you've had 2 weeks where you've had red arrows and poor scores, but on the season, you climb to such heights that a little drop back in the grand scheme of things probably isn't as bad as it actually is.
That's the way it needs to be looked at, really, isn't it? It's just I had so many weeks where I got lucky and I had the rub of the green and I got the high rank, and then you have a couple that sort of kick you back a bit. But overall, on average, 23k at this stage in the season, and I bit your arm off for that. So yeah, look,
exactly. I had sorry, not to dwell on this, just one last point on that. I had I think I got up to around maybe even a bit higher than that, maybe 22k. Let's just say after my really good run of green arrows, and then I dropped after a few bad weeks, fucking up my bench boost, etc. Dropped all the way back down to about 200k. So I've kind of then climbed back up again. So there's no reason why you've dropped off. You might even drop off again next week. Who knows? But then, you've still got time to recover and pull back up to where you want to be, which is, I guess, your aim now is to hopefully cement that top 10k spot. And for me, I guess I'm aiming for there, but I'll equally be happy with top 20k, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's I suppose for me, I'd love a really high rank. I suppose when you start making FPL content, it's nice to kind of have one that you can say, oh, I came top 5k one time. But look, if I beat you, I'm happy.
Yeah.
No, but genuinely, I suppose top beating last season would be lovely. But honestly, I think if I was outside the top 30 at this stage, I'd be pretty gutted for the season based on where I was at. Mm-hmm. But not to dwell, looking at transfers, I'm going to get rid of Barnes and Vardy, and to free up funds, I was going to get rid of Pope just to kind of help me afford a bit more, but I chatted to you about it and you reckon Salah's actually the guy to move on, and I agree. Removing Pope isn't going to help me for game week 29.
Exactly, yeah, that was my point. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Well, no, yeah, so just to elaborate on that for people, I was going to get rid of Pope because of extra cash on the bench there, thinking I need that extra 1.5 million to go further up the field, but really changing Pope to someone else doesn't help me get that extra player in for 29 that I'm already short on, so I'm better just leaving him, getting rid of Salah, who has the blank, and going from there. So I think Kane is definitely in. One of Bale or Son is definitely in. I would be edging towards Son, to be honest with you, even though Bale has been amazing. I just think it's almost that, whenever Son's not blanked, but whenever he hasn't had the same sort of returns as Kane and Bale, you kind of think he's due one. But that leaves me with, if I went, say, Kane and Son in, I have a midfield slot of 10.6 million, so I could actually just go straight for a triple up. Just do it. And it's tempting, because I don't really know what midfielder I'd want for 10.6 who isn't the other one. Do you know?
Yeah. So are you... So you're kind of weighing up a midfielder who also has a fixture in week 29, aren't you? So
yeah,
in terms
but
of the club, so you're kind of looking at, the triple up could be a good work. I obviously went Lingard. He doesn't play, for those considering Lingard, it's obvious now because FPL have red flagged him, but he doesn't play this week against Man United, so you will have to bench him. but he obviously does have a game in 29. Grealish might be back by then.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like 10.6 there. Now, one other option would be if I did just go whole hog -8, and this isn't even for optimum. No, actually, it's not an option, so ignore I said anything. I've already got triple city. I was looking at KDB. I might just go triple up. I might just do it. I don't know. But definitely at least 2 Spurs guys coming in, possibly a third is my transfers for the week. Who are you going to be bringing in?
Yeah, so I am definitely getting a Spurs midfielder in for, well, actually nothing's definite. I might save a transfer this week to have then obviously 2 free transfers in week 29, and at that point I'll possibly do a -8. I'm looking at to get to 11 playing players in week 29. I will have to either take a -8 now, a -8 next week, or -4 in both of these weeks. So whenever I do that minus, doesn't matter to the overall score by the end of the season. So it's just sort of timing it of when I want to do it. So yeah, I might go Salah to Son this game week just for the one transfer, and then do my -8 the following week, or because I want those West Ham defenders, like I said. But yeah, it's a few different ways I could go. But yeah, right now, possibly looking at Salah to Son this week. But yes, it's up in the air for myself.
Very good. So we'll see how that pans out next week on next week's show.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up,
go on.
Captaincy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just about to bring that up as well. So at the minute, I've defaulted it straight onto Fernandes. It's tough. It is a tough choice this week because obviously West Ham isn't like last season's West Ham. It's not a great fixture anymore. Like we've just alluded to earlier on, they're 5th in the league. But yes, it's tough this week. I guess sort of Man City have Fulham, but again they're a decent outfit at the minute, and rotation's an issue. So captaincy there, you really don't want sort of captain Gundogan, and then he comes on for the last 10 minutes. Kane, the Spurs guys have Arsenal, so that's not easy these days. So it's captaincy's fairly tough, which is why I've kind of defaulted it onto Fernandes at the minute. But not that I'm set in stone on that, if that makes sense.
Emi Martinez. I've never considered a goalkeeper captain, Wes, but if there was a week no one else looks like a standout option, Fernandes up against a tricky West Ham.
Do you reckon you'd have the battle to do it though?
I don't think I've the stones, so I'm all talk. But I mean, like when you look at the amount of double-digit hauls the guys had, when you look at him up against Newcastle, I'm just saying, let's revisit it next week. I probably don't have the stones, and I probably won't do it, but next week we'll come back and we'll see, would Martinez have been my best captaincy option? I have a feeling he will have been.
Yeah.
It'd be hard though, if we're bringing in Kane or another sort of Spurs fella, it'd be hard to be captaining anyone, I think, outside. I know Spurs have Arsenal, but I mean, like, if I bring in Kane, he'll probably be my captain against Arsenal, to be honest.
Yeah, I didn't touch upon Kane myself. It's a valid captain, and if you take the names away from it, Arsenal and West Ham, at the minute West Ham are statistically a better team, so yeah, it maybe makes more sense to go Kane over Fernandes. It's tough one for captaincy this week actually. There's no real standout option. There's no one there's not like a Bruno at home to West Brom or anything like that, so it's going to be quite split, I imagine, and maybe it's a week to take a punt on someone like Martinez or someone a bit more random, maybe. Who knows? I
mean, I'm talking of getting rid of Jamie Vardy whenever he has a home fixture against Sheffield in the same week, which seems a bit crazy.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? But I've kind of been sucked into that trap before of, can I take out player X when they've got this much of an easy fixture, but when it's going to make your team better for the longer run, and you are going to have to do it the following. I don't know. Actually, maybe it is better to wait. Maybe you do have to wait on Kane one more week. Could you do Kane in week? Could you do Kane in week 29 when Vardy doesn't have that fixture, and maybe just bring in a couple of the midfielders this week rather than going triple for the Arsenal game that might be cagey because Arsenal defensively are a bit better these days under Arteta. Don't know. It's tough. It's very tough.
I think actually, do you know what? Whenever I look at that, the move is to go Salah out, Barnes out. Maybe even Son and Bale in, or maybe just one of them plus another in.
Yeah.
Leave it a week. Leave Vardy have his fixture at Sheffield, see what happens. Then go Vardy to Kane, and maybe do another one for a -4. And we'll be sitting well. So yeah, look, actually Vardy could stay in. And if Vardy does stay in, I'd be tempted to captain him. If you're staying, mate, you're pulling your weight.
Yeah, and also for your just to touch upon your team, it wouldn't be as scary for you like going into those Tottenham games with 0 Spurs. At least say in the last game, Kane got 2 assists, but he actually assisted Bale. Maybe you'd have him by that stage, and you know, if Spurs do get a couple against Arsenal, maybe the midfielders that you bring in will be in the points rather than Kane hogging them all.
Absolutely. Well, Wes, I think that's about it for today. We've covered everything we need to cover. People listening, if you want more of this, and more up-to-date kind of roundup of it all, Friday night, 8 p.m, we're streaming on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel. Just search FF Hub or something. You'll find it. You'll see us on our Twitters. We'll be promoting it. Yeah, come and say hello, and make sure you subscribe to this podcast, and make sure you leave us a 5-star review. That's always, isn't it?
Yeah, I enjoyed today's pod, John, and I guess one last shout out for the Derry Spice Boy. What was his name again?
Oh, his name? It wasn't Scott Sanders. That's your guy, Rory Timoney, Sergeant Rory Timoney.
Yeah, it's the sergeant as well, isn't he? Maybe they'll get in trouble for it. They're ripping their sergeant, but yeah, he shouldn't be such a Derry Spice Boy, really, should he?
I was thinking about a story I could tell about my cousin Cormac, who's there. He is with them. I don't know the ranks and all that stuff, but they know him.
Embarrassing.
Yeah, I was trying to think of embarrassing ones. I didn't know what to go with, and I don't really know. There's a lot of things, but you probably know them all. It's funny, like he's the type of guy who, from he was literally like, I'm not joking you, Wes. You see when I say when Cormac was, I used to be and him used to run around with each other every day, every summer for the first 10, 15 years of our life. He used to be like, he would have ponchos and hammocks and army camouflage stuff coming out his ears from when he was 2 years old. That's what he was. He was destined to be in the army, like.
Yeah.
But do you know what is the most surprising thing and out of character thing he's ever done? I'll tell you this much, Wes. Who has the kindest face in the land?
That's yourself, John.
I have the kindest face in the land. Cormac punched me in the face one day when we were like 13. And I mean, he proper dropped me. Coming home from school, I had a friend in my class who I was kind of poking a bit of fun at. He thought I was bullying him, and the righteous man, Cormac Nellis, stood up and punched me right in the gob.
Good. Sounds like you deserved it.
It was my mate I was teasing with. He thought I was bullying, but fair play to him standing up for what was right. But he punched the man in the land with the kindest face. So ask him about that, maybe, lads. Yeah. He'll tell you I was being a scumbag, but whenever he got pulled up by his dad, he was crying his eyes out. God love him, so I forgave him. But yeah, that was the most controversial point of me and Cormac's relationship.
Love it.
Anyway, enough of that chat, Wes. It's 55 minutes in. We'll wrap it up.
Yeah. Cheers, everyone, for listening. And,
see you later.
We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.